Some called it just a chest. Others believed it was a sacred doorway to something far greater than human comprehension. Not merely a container of stone tablets, but a vessel forged to carry the weight of divine will. The Ark of the Covenant was more than myth, more than artifact. It was a mystery older than memory and deeper than faith. For centuries, it lived in shadows, spoken of in whispers, etched into scriptures, chased through deserts and dreams. Its story, scattered across continents, inspired not only kings and prophets but poets, soldiers, scholars, and skeptics alike. No one could let it go, because no one could quite accept that it was truly gone. The Ark was said to house the 10 Commandments, divine law inscribed by the hand of God. Not interpreted, not imagined, written. Tangible evidence of a relationship between man and something far greater. A covenant sealed in thunder atop Mount Sinai, and carried across generations as a sacred promise. It led armies. It brought cities to their knees. It terrified enemies and inspired hope. But then, without warning, it vanished. Taken? Hidden? Lost? No one knows. But in its absence, it became something even more powerful. A question. One that echoed through time with increasing volume. What if it's still out there? In dusty archives and remote villages, in satellite scans and sacred texts, that question has never stopped haunting those willing to look. And recently the trail got warmer. In the highlands of Ethiopia, under clouds heavy with ancient rain, a group of minds gathered, quietly, deliberately, with one shared purpose. They weren't adventurers. They weren't after fame. They were scientists, historians, and archaeologists, people who had spent their lives trying to bridge the past and the present. And at their center stood Dr. Miriam Cohen, a woman whose entire career had been spent unraveling sacred mysteries buried under centuries of silence. Their destination was a mountaintop monastery, weathered by time and clinging to the rock like a guardian of something unspeakably old. Inside its walls lived monks, wrapped in silence, keepers of stories passed down not through paper, but through reverence. Their eyes, cautious but kind, spoke of legends they had carried for lifetimes. Dr. Cohen had come prepared. Not with assumptions but with data. Ground-penetrating radar, satellite overlays, isotopic dating tools. Clues had been followed for years, each one leading here. The radar confirmed it, something unnatural buried beneath the monastery floor. A structure. A chamber. Man-made. Seal. No digging began right away. First came days of observation, prayer, careful mapping. The monks allowed the team inside, watching them with a quiet tension. They'd heard the stories too. They'd grown up in the presence of something holy. Whether it was fact or faith no longer mattered. To them it was real. And then the readings shifted. The scanners detected a cavity, perfectly rectangular, aligned with the original foundations of the ancient chapel that had once stood here long before the monastery took its place. The shape matched no natural formation. And it was deeper than expected. Much deeper. For the first time in years, Dr. Cohen felt breathless. With full care, the team began their descent, removing layers of sediment, brick, and stone with painstaking precision. Brushes, not blades. Sensors, not shovels. This wasn't excavation. It was communion with something sacred. And that's when they saw it. A door. Heavy. Stone. Covered in dust and inscriptions nearly lost to time. Hebrew carvings faded but visible, alongside unfamiliar symbols that defied translation. It was a seal, not just physical but spiritual. The kind of threshold that made everyone stop moving all at once. The room fell into silence. They had reached the place where history held its breath. Dr. Cohen looked at her team. No one spoke. They all knew. This wasn't about artifacts anymore. This was about belief. About generations of stories, countless prayers, and the possibility that they were standing in front of the answer to one of the world's oldest questions. Very slowly they began the process of opening the chamber. The stone groaned under pressure. Dust exploded into the air. The scent was unmistakable, ancient, dry, untouched. As the opening widened, darkness poured out. Not just absence of light but depth. As if the room beyond had not been disturbed by life in 1,000 years. They entered. Lights in hand, breaths held, footsteps hesitant. Inside the air was thick. Time itself seemed slower. The walls were lined with stone, smooth and intentionally carved. The chamber stretched farther than expected. And at its center, resting as if it had always been there, was a golden chest. It matched the descriptions almost perfectly. Roughly 4 feet long. 2 cherubim kneeling on top, wings outstretched and touching above an empty space. The gold had dulled with time, but it still shimmered under the torchlight. And in that moment, no one could look away. No one dared to. The team approached carefully. No one touched it. Instead, scanners were deployed. Metal analysis began. The craftsmanship was ancient, far older than any known replica. The inscriptions matched those from Exodus. No artistic liberties. No signs of modern forgery. It wasn't proof. But it wasn't dismissible either. Tensions outside the monastery were rising. News had spread, leaked by a source unknown. The world now knew what this team had possibly uncovered. And with that came pressure. Religious leaders sent emissaries. Government officials demanded reports. Journalists camped out at the foot of the mountain. But the team refused to rush. They continued their testing. Every component was documented. Every scan analyzed. Carbon dating of nearby artifacts placed the site around the time of the first temple's destruction. The materials were consistent with Levantine metallurgy from that era. Nothing contradicted the possibility. And yet, none of that was the most important thing. The most important thing was the silence. The way the room made you feel smaller. Not insignificant, but aware. That you were standing before something whose meaning transcended your understanding. Something that belonged to no single people, no single religion, no single time. Something that belonged to all of us. Dr. Cohen refused to make bold claims. We cannot say what this is definitively, she said. But we can say this, it has meaning. Deep, lasting meaning. And maybe that's what people came here to find in the first place. And perhaps she was right. Because beyond the relic itself, what stirred the world was not the object but the feeling. The connection. The idea that maybe, just maybe, we weren't alone in our need for hope. That we had always been reaching towards something beyond ourselves, not just out of fear, but out of wonder. The chamber was studied, scanned, and documented. But in the end it was left untouched. Resealed. Not because the team lacked courage, but because they understood. Some discoveries aren't meant to be unboxed. Some truths hold more power when they remain mysteries. And the monks, they nodded in quiet agreement. To them this was never about validation. They didn't need science to confirm what they had always believed. They knew the stories, the rituals, the prayers passed from elder to apprentice. They were not surprised by what lay beneath the stone. They had carried the burden of secrecy for generations. And now they shared it just briefly with the world. As the door closed once more, as the torches dimmed and the dust settled, something had changed. Not just in that monastery, but in us. A moment had occurred. A glimpse into something bigger. Something unexplainable. Something holy. Outside the world resumed its noise. But inside that mountain, silence reigned again. And somewhere deep within that silence, the ark waited. Maybe for another time. Maybe forever. But in its waiting, it had already done what it was meant to do. It reminded us of who we are. And what we still long to believe.